She was invisible, a homeless girl in tattered clothes, scarred hands, and no one who would miss her. He was an alpha werewolf, dominant, lethal, worshipped, feared. That night she found him bleeding out in a dark alley, power fading, death closing in. Every instinct screamed run. She didn't.
No.
She dropped to her knees and pressed her hands to the glowing amulet burning into his chest.
If I hadn't done this,
then she did the
you'd
one
be dead.
thing no human had ever survived. She ripped the silver chain from his throat. His eyes flew open, glowing, feral, murderous. "Don't move," she whispered, skin blistering from the cursed metal. "If I hadn't done this, you'd be dead." The alpha froze, because for the first time in his life, a weak human had just saved the most dangerous predator in the city. "Welcome to the channel. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? USA, Europe, Canada, Africa, or Asia? I'd love to see how far these stories are traveling. And if this story grabs you, if it keeps you watching, hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next. The first thing Nisara learned in life was how to stay invisible, not because she wanted to, but because people who noticed you on the streets were usually the dangerous kind. She woke up that evening in the same place she always did, tucked behind a dumpster in the industrial district, her body stiff from the cold pavement. The hum of distant machinery vibrated through the concrete. A flickering streetlight cast harsh shadows across her face. For a moment she didn't move. She just stared at the cracked asphalt beneath her fingertips, counting her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then reality settled back in, still here, still alive. She sat up slowly, her spine protesting. Her oversized hoodie was torn at the shoulder and her boots, held together by duct tape, were soaked from last night's rain. Pain was normal now, cold was normal, hunger was normal. She stretched, ignoring the sharp ache in her ribs where someone had shoved her off a bus 2 days ago. By the time the moon rose, Nisara was making her usual rounds, checking trash bins for anything useful, avoiding eye contact, keeping her head down. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, a low guttural growl echoing from the alley between 2 abandoned warehouses. She froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But curiosity, stupid, reckless curiosity, made her take 1 step forward, then another. The alley was dark, but she could see him now. A massive man crumpled against the brick wall, his chest heaving. His skin was slick with sweat, and around his neck hung a large obsidian amulet wrapped in silver chain, glowing with a sickly violet light. The smell hit her next, burning flesh. Her stomach turned. He was dying, and the thing killing him was the amulet itself. Nisara had seen dead men before. They all looked the same after a while, eyes glassy, mouths slack, bodies still in a way that felt wrong. But this man wasn't dead yet. His chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven gasps. His fingers twitched against the pavement, clawing at nothing, and that amulet around his neck pulsed like a heartbeat. She should leave, she knew that. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 3 years on these streets screamed at her to turn around and pretend she'd never seen him. But her feet wouldn't move. The violet glow from the amulet cast strange shadows across his face. He was huge, easily twice her size, with broad shoulders and muscles that looked carved from stone. His clothes were expensive. Dark jeans, a leather jacket that probably cost more than she'd seen in her entire life. Rich, powerful. The kind of person who would never look at someone like her. And yet here he was, dying in the same gutter she'd slept in last week. The smell of burning flesh grew stronger. She gagged, covering her nose with her sleeve. The amulet, it's the amulet. She didn't know how she knew that. Maybe it was the way the silver chain sizzled against his skin, leaving angry red welts across his collarbone. Maybe it was the unnatural hum vibrating through the air, making her teeth ache. Or maybe it was the way his eyes suddenly snapped open, glowing amber, inhuman, and locked onto hers. "Help," he rasped. The word came out broken, desperate. Nisara stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. Those eyes. They weren't human. Run, run. But then his hand reached toward her, trembling, and she saw the raw terror in his face. Not the terror of a predator, the terror of prey. She'd worn that expression herself too many times to ignore it. The logical part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive through stolen food, cold nights, and dangerous encounters, told her this was a trap. Men like this didn't collapse in alleys. Men like this didn't need help from girls like her. But the amulet pulsed again, brighter this time, and his back arched off the ground. His scream was inhuman, a sound of pure agony that echoed off the warehouse walls. Nisara pressed her hands against her ears, but she couldn't block it out. She looked around frantically. The alley was empty, no cars, no pedestrians. The industrial district was always deserted at this hour, that's why she chose it. No one to judge her, no one to chase her away, no one to help. She glanced back at the man. His skin was turning grey now, his lips tinged with blue. Whatever that amulet was doing, it was killing him fast. Not your problem. Not your fight, but even as she thought it, she was moving forward again. "Damn it," she whispered. "Damn it, damn it, damn it." She dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring the way her heart threatened to burst through her chest. Up close she could see the details of the amulet, an obsidian stone set in intricate silver metalwork, symbols she didn't recognize carved into its surface. Beautiful, deadly. The man's eyes found hers again, and this time she saw something beyond the terror, recognition, as if he was seeing her, really seeing her for the first time. "Please," he breathed. That single word broke something inside her. Nisara had spent 3 years being invisible, 3 years being ignored, stepped over, pushed aside. She'd learned to accept it, even embrace it. Invisibility meant safety. But this man, this dying stranger with inhuman eyes, was asking her for help. Not demanding, not commanding, asking. She took a shaky breath and reached for the amulet. "If this kills me," she muttered, "I'm going to haunt you forever." The heat radiating from the silver made her hesitate. Even from inches away, she could feel it burning the air between them. Her survival instincts screamed one last warning. She ignored them. "Hold still," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm going to get that thing off you." His eyes widened, surprise, relief, but he managed a barely perceptible nod. Nisara grabbed the hem of her hoodie and wrapped the fabric around her fingers. It wouldn't be enough protection. She knew that, but it was all she had. She positioned herself behind his head, her hands hovering over the clasp at the back of his neck. The amulet pulsed again, as if sensing her intent. "Here goes nothing," she whispered, and she reached for the silver chain. The moment her fingers touched the silver, the world exploded into fire. Pain unlike anything Nisara had ever experienced shot through her hands, racing up her arms like lightning through wire. It wasn't just heat, it was corruption, poison, wrongness seeping into her bones. Her vision went white. Her ears rang with a high-pitched shriek that might have been the metal or might have been her own screaming. She couldn't tell any more, but she didn't let go. Her fingers, now numb and burning simultaneously, an impossible sensation, fumbled blindly for the clasp. The silver felt alive under her touch, writhing and resisting, as if it had a will of its own. The fabric of her hoodie disintegrated where it touched the chain, the thread simply ceasing to exist. Find the clasp, just find the clasp. The man beneath her convulsed violently, his body arching so hard she heard his spine crack. His scream joined hers, harmonizing in shared agony. Her left hand finally found the small mechanism at the base of his skull. a tiny lever burning hot, almost too small to grip. Her fingers were swelling now, the skin bubbling and splitting, blood mixed with clear fluid making everything slippery. "Come on," she sobbed. "Come on, come on." The lever clicked. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the chain released, falling away from his throat. Nisara grabbed the amulet itself, a mistake she realized instantly, and hurled it with all her strength across the alley. The moment it left her hands, a shockwave of pure energy erupted from where it had rested against his skin. The force threw her backward like she weighed nothing. She crashed into a pile of garbage bags, the air driven from her lungs. Her vision swam. Black spots danced across her eyes, but she heard him breathe, a real breath, deep, shuddering, alive. She tried to sit up, and that's when the pain truly registered. Her hands, oh God, her hands. She couldn't see them clearly through her tear-blurred vision, but she didn't need to. She could feel the damage. The skin was gone in places, revealing raw, weeping flesh underneath. Blisters covered every surface, some already burst and oozing. Her fingers wouldn't straighten properly. She cradled them against her chest, biting down on her lips so hard she tasted blood. She wouldn't scream. She couldn't. Screaming meant attracting attention, and attention meant danger. Breathe. Just breathe. You've hurt worse. You've survived worse. Both statements were lies, but she repeated them anyway. In front of her, Draxon gasped again, but this breath sounded different, stronger. His body began to change. The transformation was horrifying to witness. His bones cracked and reformed, the sounds like gunshots in the confined space. His muscles rippled and expanded, tearing through his shirt. His hands, no pause, grew massive, fingers elongating into curved claws that scraped against the concrete. Four erupted across his arms, his chest, his face thick and dark as midnight. His jaw extended, teeth sharpening into fangs. Nisara forgot about her hands. She forgot about the pain. All she could do was stare as the man became a monster. Werewolf, the word materialized in her mind with absolute certainty. She'd heard stories, of course. Urban legends whispered in homeless shelters, rumors of creatures that hunted in the industrial district. She'd always dismissed them as paranoid fiction. She'd been wrong. Draxon rose to his feet, no, to his haunches, towering over her now at nearly 8 feet tall. His eyes, still glowing that eerie amber, fixed on her face. His lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "You," he growled, his voice more animal than man, layered with harmonics that made her bones vibrate. "You took it." Nisara tried to speak, but her throat had closed up. She pressed herself back against the garbage bags, her ruined hands raised instinctively in defense. Useless, she knew, but instinct didn't care about logic. His eyes locked onto the amulet where it lay several feet away, its violet glow now completely extinguished. Just a piece of jewelry, harmless. His gaze snapped back to her, and he lunged. Nisara threw herself sideways, rolling behind a dumpster as Draxon's claws raked the air where her head had been. She felt the wind of his strike against her cheek. "I saved you," she screamed, her voice cracking with terror and indignation. "That thing was killing you." But he wasn't listening. His eyes were wild, unfocused, his body caught in some state between human intelligence and animal rage. He staggered, bracing himself against the brick wall, breathing in harsh, ragged gasps. His head tilted suddenly, ears, when had he grown ears? Swiveling toward the mouth of the alley, Nisara heard it too, voices, multiple, approaching fast, tracking his scent. Said he was hunting near the industrial district. "If he's injured, we bring him back to the den. If he's dead, we find who did it and make them pay." The footsteps were getting closer. Nisara's mind raced through her options with the cold calculation that came from years of survival. Option 1, run. Leave the werewolf to his pack or enemies or whatever those approaching voices represented. Save herself. Option 2. Stay and try to explain to whoever was coming that she'd just saved this creature's life. Option 3. Hide. Take the injured werewolf with her and hope those voices passed by. Option 1 was smartest. Option 2 was suicidal. She chose option 3. Move, she hissed at Draxon, grabbing his massive, fur-covered arm. Her burned hands screamed in protest, but she ignored them. We need to move now. He snarled at her, snapping his jaws inches from her face. She could smell his breath, hot, metallic, dangerous, but she didn't flinch. Listen to me, she said, locking eyes with him. I don't know who those people are, but I'm guessing you don't want them finding you like this. So you can either rip my throat out and die in this alley, or you can shut up and follow me. For a moment she thought he would choose the throat-tripping option, then something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of recognition. Intelligence cutting through the animal rage. He gave a slight nod. Nisara didn't wait for him to change his mind. She hauled him toward the rusted fire escape ladder bolted to the warehouse wall, ancient, probably unstable, but their only option. The voices were less than a block away now. Climb, she ordered. Draxon tried to grab the first rung, but his massive clawed hands couldn't grip properly. He snarled in frustration, his body still caught between forms, neither fully wolf nor fully human. It smelled silver. Someone used silver here. They were out of time. Nisara positioned herself behind him, using her body as leverage despite the way her hands throbbed with each movement. Up, just focus on going up. Together they climbed, slowly, painfully. Each rung felt like a mountain. Nisara's hands left bloody smears on the metal, and twice Draxon nearly fell, his coordination still compromised from whatever poison had been in that amulet. But they kept moving. The ladder ended at a maintenance platform halfway up the building, a small ledge barely big enough for 2 people, or 1 person and 1 half-transformed werewolf. Nisara shoved Draxon into the shadows behind an old, defunct air conditioning unit, then pressed herself flat against the wall beside him. Below, 3 figures entered the alley. Nisara risked a glance down through the metal grating beneath her feet. The newcomers were tall, powerfully built, moving with an inhuman grace that marked them as predators. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, not amber like Draxon's, but a cold silver blue. Different pack, she realized. These weren't friends. One of them, the tallest, with a scar running down his left cheek, bent down and picked up something from the ground. The amulet. He turned it over in his hands, examining the now dark obsidian stone. His lips curled back from his teeth in what might have been a smile or a snarl. This is the Alpha's mark, he said quietly, his voice carrying easily in the still night air. Shadowclaw pack, Draxon's personal seal. The other 2 exchanged glances that Nisara couldn't read from her position, but the tension in their postures was unmistakable. Then where is he? One of them asked, a woman with white blonde hair pulled back in a severe braid. If he's here, we claim territory rights. If he's dead. If he's dead, then Shadowclaw is leaderless, the scarred man interrupted. And we move in before they can elect a successor. They began searching the alley methodically, overturning trash bins, checking behind dumpsters, their glowing eyes scanning every shadow. Nisara held her breath until her lungs burned. Beside her, Draxon had finally stopped convulsing. His breathing had steadied, though it still came in heavy, laboured gasps. She could feel the heat radiating from his body in waves. His form was shifting again, slowly this time, almost imperceptibly, the fur receding, his bone structure compacting. He was changing back. His eyes found hers in the darkness, still glowing but clearer now, aware, intelligent, human. She pressed a finger to her lips. Quiet. For a long moment he just stared at her. She could see him processing, the burned hands she'd used to save him, the blood still dripping from her fingertips, the way she'd positioned herself between him and danger despite being completely defenseless. She saw the exact moment understanding dawned. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to something she couldn't quite name. Then, impossibly, he nodded. Below, the wolves searched for another 5 minutes that felt like hours. The scarred man pocketed the amulet and gestured to his companions. He's not here. Probably dropped this during a hunt and moved on. We'll track his scent from here, see where it leads. What if it's a trap? The blonde woman asked. Then we spring it carefully, he replied. Move out. They left the alley as silently as they'd entered, 3 shadows melting into the darkness. Nisara waited until their footsteps had faded completely. Then she waited another full minute, counting her heartbeats. Only then did she allow herself to slump against the wall. Her hands throbbed in time with her pulse. Her head spun. Every muscle in her body trembled with post-adrenaline crash. And sitting next to her, now fully human again, naked from the waist up where his shirt had been destroyed by the transformation, his skin slick with sweat, was a werewolf who 15 minutes ago had tried to kill her. She turned to look at him. He was staring at her hands, at the angry burns and blistered flesh, his expression unreadable. So, she whispered hoarsely because the silence was somehow worse than talking, "You're welcome." Draxon didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at Nisara with those unsettling amber eyes, his chest rising and falling with slow, measured breaths. The kind of breathing that came before violence. She knew that rhythm. She'd seen it in the men who'd cornered her in dark alleys, in the police officers who'd decided she was easier to hit than to help. The calm before the storm. Her body tensed, ready to run despite knowing she had nowhere to go. "Where is it?" His voice was rough like gravel scraped across concrete. Completely human now, but somehow more dangerous for it. Nisara blinked. "Where is what?" "The amulet." He leaned forward, and she saw the muscles in his shoulders coil like springs. "What did you do with my Pax seal?" "Your Pax," she let out a breathless, slightly hysterical laugh. "Are you serious right now? That thing almost killed you." "That thing," he said slowly, each word precise and sharp, "is a sacred heirloom passed down through 12 generations of Shadowclaw alphas. It marks my authority, my right to lead. And you," his eyes raked over her torn clothes, her dirty face, her scarred hands, "you stole it." The accusation hit her like a physical blow. "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice shaking with exhaustion and pain and something that might have been rage. "I saved your life, you ungrateful. You had no right to touch it." He surged to his feet, and even without the fur and fangs, he was terrifying. 7 feet of pure muscle and barely contained fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Without that seal, my authority is forfeit. The pack will see it as weakness. They'll what?" Nisara pushed herself upright, ignoring the way her vision swam. "Challenge you, try to take over. Good. Maybe the next alpha won't be dumb enough to wear poisoned jewelry." Draxon froze. "What?" "That amulet was killing you," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze even though every instinct screamed at her to look away from a predator. "I don't know what it was supposed to do originally, but someone tampered with it. The silver was corrupted. Silverbane, I think. I heard stories about it in the shelters. Werewolf poison." "Impossible," but doubt flickered across his face. "The amulet is kept in my personal quarters. No one has access except—" He stopped mid-sentence. The silence stretched between them heavy with implications. "Except who?" Nisara pressed. Draxon's expression went carefully blank, the kind of blankness that came from years of practice. Alpha neutrality, giving nothing away. That's pack business, he said finally. Not your concern. Right, not my concern. She laughed again, that same edge of hysteria creeping in. Just like it wasn't my concern when I found you dying in an alley. Just like it wasn't my concern when I burned my hands off getting that thing away from you. Just like it wasn't my concern when I hid you from those other wolves, who definitely wanted to find you dead. She held up her ruined hands between them. Look at them, really look. The burns were worse now. In the dim light filtering up from the street, she could see the full extent of the damage. Angry red blisters covered her palms and fingers. In some places, the skin had peeled away entirely, revealing raw pink flesh underneath. Her right thumb hung at an odd angle, dislocated probably, though she hadn't noticed until now. They would scar. She knew that with absolute certainty, if infection didn't kill her first. That's what Silverbane does to humans, she said quietly. Now imagine what it would have done to a werewolf wearing it against his skin for hours, days, however long you had it on. Draxon stared at her hands. His jaw worked like he was trying to form words and couldn't quite manage it. Those wolves down there, Nisara continued, her voice growing stronger. They took the amulet, called it your alpha's mark. Said if you were dead, they'd move in on your territory. So yeah, congratulations. Your sacred heirloom is now in the hands of what I'm guessing are your enemies, and I'm the idiot who saved your life for absolutely no reason. She turned away from him, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Her hands throbbed in time with her heartbeat. Her head felt too heavy for her neck. You know where the ladder is, she said. Feel free to leave whenever you want. I'm sure you have very important alpha business to attend to. Behind her she heard him move. Closer, she tensed, waiting for claws or teeth or whatever method he'd choose to repay her theft. Instead, she felt him crouch beside her. Let me see your hands, he said. His voice had changed, softer, almost gentle. Why? She didn't turn around. So you can lecture me about how I shouldn't have touched your precious jewelry. No, a pause. So I can see how badly I hurt you. Nisara turned slowly, not quite believing what she'd heard. Draxon was kneeling now, putting himself at her eye level. His expression had shifted from fury to something she couldn't quite read. Not quite guilt, not quite remorse, something harder, more painful, understanding. I need to see, he repeated. She hesitated, then extended her hands. He took them carefully, his touch so gentle it contradicted everything about his size and strength. His palms were rough with calluses but warm. Living warmth, not the corrupted heat of the cursed silver. He examined the burns in silence, turning her hands slowly under the dim light. She watched his face, saw the muscle in his jaw jump as he catalogued each blister, each patch of missing skin, each finger that wouldn't straighten properly. Silverbane, he murmured finally. You knew what it was and you touched it anyway. I didn't exactly have time to think it through. Silverbane is designed to bind werewolf magic, to trap us between forms, prevent healing, induce cellular breakdown. His thumb hovered over a particularly bad burn on her palm, not quite touching. To humans, it causes fourth-degree burns on contact, tissue death, nerve damage. The pain is supposed to be excruciating, Nisara supplied. Yeah, got that. And you held on long enough to remove the entire chain. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. The clasp was stuck, took a few seconds. A few seconds of direct contact with Silverbane. He looked up at her, his amber eyes intense. Most trained warriors wouldn't last that long. The pain would make them let go involuntarily. But you. He stopped, shaking his head slowly. I thought you were stealing it, he said quietly. When I woke up and the amulet was gone, saw you nearby with burned hands, I thought you tried to take it and gotten hurt in the process. Some foolish human who didn't know what they were touching. A foolish human who saved your life, she corrected. Yes, he set her hands down with infinite care. That's exactly what you did. The acknowledgement should have felt like victory. Instead, it just made her more tired. The amulet, Draxon continued, his voice taking on a harder edge, has been in my possession for 3 months. Since I took over as Alpha after my father's death, I wear it during all official pack functions, territory patrols. Dawn was still 2 hours away when Draxon left. He'd insisted on wrapping Nisara's hands first, using strips torn from what remained of his shirt, soaked in relatively clean water from a rain barrel on the roof. The makeshift bandages wouldn't do much, but they were better than nothing. Find a clinic, he told her. Tell them you burned yourself cooking. They'll treat you without asking too many questions in this district. With what money? He'd pulled a leather wallet from his back pocket, miraculously intact despite the transformation, and handed her several bills without counting them. That's too much, she'd protested, looking at what appeared to be several $100s. It's not nearly enough. His expression had been unreadable, but it's what I have on me. Then he'd climbed down the fire escape and vanished into the pre-dawn darkness, moving with the fluid grace of someone who owned the shadows. Nisara had waited on the platform until the sun began to rise, partly because she didn't trust her shaking legs to manage the ladder, partly because she couldn't quite believe any of it had been real. But her hands throbbed with very real pain, and the money in her pocket was very real, and somewhere out there was a werewolf alpha hunting for a traitor. She finally made her way down as the city began to wake. Several miles away, in the industrial zone's abandoned factory district, the Shadowclaw den occupied 3 floors of what had once been a textile mill. Humans saw only decay and danger. Werewolves saw defensible territory with multiple exits and sightlines. Draxon approached from downwind, using skills honed over decades of hunting and warfare. His body had fully healed during the walk, werewolf metabolism burning through the last traces of poison, repairing the damage the Silverbane had caused. He felt stronger than he had in months, because he hadn't worn that cursed amulet for 3 months. He'd worn it for 6, half a year of slow poisoning, half a year of weakness he'd hidden behind alpha authority and force of will. He slipped in through a maintenance entrance, avoiding the main doors where guards would be posted. The den was quiet. Most of the pack would be sleeping after the full moon ceremonies. Perfect. He made his way to the observation gallery overlooking the main gathering hall. From here he could watch without being seen, and watch he did. For 20 minutes nothing happened, then he heard voices below. Confirmed. The Alpha never returned from patrol. How long before we organize a search party? Victor already sent scouts at dawn. They'll report back within the hour. Draxon's eyes narrowed. Victor, his second in command, his most trusted lieutenant. The man who'd served his father for 15 years before pledging loyalty to Draxon. The man who had access to the Alpha's personal quarters. He watched as Victor entered the hall below, flanked by 2 guards. The second-in-command's face was appropriately grave, but Draxon had known him long enough to read the subtle tells, the slight lift at the corners of his mouth, the relaxed set of his shoulders. Victor wasn't worried about finding his Alpha's body. He was pleased. Gather the senior pack members, Victor ordered. If Draxon is truly gone, we'll need to begin succession protocols immediately. The pack cannot be without leadership. Shouldn't we wait? One of the guards asked. Give the alpha more time to return and appear weak to the other packs. Victor's voice hardened. No, we act decisively, as Draxon would have wanted. The casual use of past tense confirmed everything. Draxon smiled in the darkness, a predator's smile, all teeth and promise. Victor wanted to play alpha. Fine, let him sit in the leader's chair for a few days. Let him make his plans. Let him reveal his co-conspirators. And then Draxon would return from the dead and show his dear second-in-command exactly what happened to traitors who forgot the most important rule of pack law. The alpha always wins. 3 days later, Victor called for the ascension ceremony. Draxon watched from the shadows of the upper gallery as the pack gathered in the main hall. 73 wolves, ranging from newly turned adolescents to ancient warriors who'd served his grandfather. All dressed in ceremonial blacks and silvers, their faces solemn with manufactured grief. Only a handful looked genuinely distraught. The others wore the careful neutrality of those who'd learned to survive regime changes. Smart wolves. They'd lived through what came next. The hall had been decorated for mourning, black banners hanging from the steel rafters, candles arranged in the traditional pattern for honoring fallen alphas. Victor had been thorough. Draxon had to give him that. His second-in-command stood at the center of the hall, positioned before the ancient stone altar that had been moved here from their original territory centuries ago. The altar where every Shadowclaw alpha for 12 generations had taken their oath. The altar where Draxon's father had bled out after a challenge gone wrong, where Draxon himself had placed his hand and sworn to protect the pack above all else. Victor wore formal ceremonial robes, deep black embroidered with silver wolf symbols. He'd even managed to find the secondary alpha seal, a smaller medallion kept in the pack archives for exactly this situation. Preparation. Planning. This wasn't opportunistic, this was premeditated. Brothers and sisters of Shadowclaw, Victor's voice rang out commanding and clear. He'd always had a gift for oratory. We gather in darkness to honor our fallen alpha, Draxon Shadowborn, who has gone to join our ancestors in the eternal hunt. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. May he run free, they chorused, the traditional response. Draxon's jaw tightened. Hearing his own funeral rites was surreal. For 3 days we have searched, Victor continued. Every territory marker, every hunting ground, every path our alpha might have taken. We found only traces of his scent leading into rival territory, and this. He held up a piece of torn fabric. Draxon recognized it immediately, part of his shirt, the one that had been shredded during his transformation. Victor must have sent wolves back to the alley to collect evidence. Thorough indeed. His blood was on this cloth, Victor said gravely. And near it we scented the Frostfang pack, our enemies. They have taken our alpha from us through cowardice and treachery. Angry growls erupted from the crowd. Several younger wolves shifted partially, unable to control their rage. Draxon watched faces carefully, noting who seemed genuinely shocked versus who were simply going through the motions. There, in the back corner, Marcus, one of the senior warriors, looked distinctly uncomfortable. He kept glancing at Victor with an expression that might have been guilt or might have been fear. Another conspirator, or just a wolf smart enough to smell deception. But we cannot afford the luxury of extended mourning. Victor raised his voice over the growls. We are surrounded by rivals. Frostfang to the north, Ironhide to the east, Bloodmoon watching for any sign of weakness. Without an alpha, we invite challenge. Without leadership, we invite destruction. He paused for effect. Draxon had to admit the timing was perfect. Therefore, according to pack law, I invoke the right of succession. As second in command and most senior warrior of Shadowclaw, I claim the alpha mantle. I claim the responsibility, the burden, the sacred duty to protect this pack with my life and strength. Victor placed his hand on the altar. Who stands witness? I stand witness, called out a voice. Helena, the pack's chief strategist. Draxon had promoted her himself 2 years ago. Another traitor. I stand witness, echoed Marcus, though his voice shook slightly. 3 more wolves stepped forward, each calling out their witness, all members of Victor's inner circle. Victor smiled. Then by pack law and right of blood I claim. You claim nothing, Victor, except perhaps a death sentence for treason. Draxon's voice cut through the hall like a blade. 73 heads whipped toward the gallery entrance. 73 pairs of eyes went wide with shock. Victor's face drained of all color. Draxon descended the stairs slowly, deliberately, each footfall echoing in the suddenly silent hall. He was dressed simply, jeans, black t-shirt, leather jacket, but he didn't need ceremonial robes. Alpha authority radiated from every movement, every breath. He was power incarnate, returned from the dead. My alpha, someone breathed. Then another, then a dozen voices at once, some confused, some relieved, some, like Victor's, absolutely terrified. Draxon walked straight to the altar, his eyes never leaving Victor's face. I believe you were about to toast my death, he said softly, dangerously. Please, don't let me interrupt. Victor's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerged. What's wrong, old friend? Draxon tilted his head. You look like you've seen a ghost, or perhaps like you've just realized your carefully planned coup has failed spectacularly. My alpha, Victor found his voice finally. We thought you were dead. The evidence, your scent, the blood. Oh, I was dying, Draxon agreed. For 6 months, actually. Slowly poisoned by Silverbane woven into the alpha's seal. The very seal you convinced me to wear at every official function. The seal you said would strengthen my authority with the traditionalist faction. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Silverbane, someone gasped. The alpha was poisoned. Who would dare? Silence. Draxon's command cracked like a whip. Every wolf froze. He turned to address the full pack, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Yes, I was poisoned. Yes, someone in this room tried to murder me. And yes, he looked back at Victor with a smile that promised. Violence, I know exactly who. Victor took a step back, then another. His eyes darted toward the exits, calculating odds. Don't, Draxon said quietly. You won't make it 3 steps. Victor didn't run. To his credit, or perhaps his survival instinct, he stood his ground, though his hands trembled slightly at his sides. You have no proof, Victor said, his voice steadier than Draxon expected. Accusations require evidence, Alpha. That's pack law. Evidence, Draxon smiled. You're right, let me present my evidence. He turned toward the entrance. Bring her in. The doors opened. 2 guards entered, flanking a small figure wrapped in a too large coat. Nisara. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. A human. In the sacred den. This is forbidden. Wolves shifted partially in outrage, hackles rising, teeth bared. The scent of aggression filled the hall, 1,000 years of instinct screaming that humans didn't belong in wolf spaces. Draxon raised one hand. The hall fell silent again, but the tension remained, thick enough to choke on. Nisara stood in the doorway, looking impossibly small and fragile, surrounded by predators. She'd cleaned up since he'd last seen her, showered, wearing donated clothes from the clinic he'd sent her to, but she still looked like she'd survived a war, because she had. She'd fought Silverbane and won. Her hands were still bandaged, thick white wrappings covering the damage. He could smell the medicinal ointment from across the room, mixed with the underlying scent of burned flesh that would take weeks to fade. She met his eyes across the hall. Scared but steady. Brave. "This human," Draxon said clearly, "saved my life 3 nights ago when your beloved second-in-command's poison finally reached critical toxicity. I collapsed in an industrial alley, alone, unable to shift, with the cursed amulet burning through my chest." He began walking toward her slowly, aware of every eye tracking his movement. This human found me. This human recognized that the Alpha's seal, the sacred heirloom Victor assured me was blessed by our ancestors, was actually killing me. And this human made a choice. He reached Nisara and gently took her right hand, carefully unwrapping the bandages. "Stop," someone whispered. "Don't show them." But Draxon continued until her palm was exposed. The burns were horrific. Even with 3 days of treatment, they looked like something from a nightmare. Blistered, weeping, the skin discolored in shades of red and purple and black. Her fingers were still swollen, some bent at wrong angles. Gasps echoed through the hall. "Silverbane burns," announced Helena from the front row, her voice shocked. "4th degree at least. Direct contact for—" She stopped, calculating. "At least 30 seconds of sustained exposure." 45, Nisara said quietly. The clasp was stuck. Draxon felt the pack's energy shift. Outrage transforming into confusion, confusion into dawning respect. "She held Silverbane," Draxon said, his voice ringing with authority, knowing it would scar her permanently. Knowing it could kill her. "She held it long enough to break the chain and throw the cursed thing away from my body. She endured agony that would have broken most warriors. And then," he gestured to the crowd, "she hid me from a Frostfang patrol that came looking for my corpse." "The Frostfang pack," Marcus spoke up. "They were involved." "No," Draxon's eyes found Victor again. "But our traitor needed them to be blamed." "Isn't that right, Victor? Send wolves back to the alley to plant evidence, make it look like a territorial assassination. Let the pack's rage focus outward while you consolidated power." Victor's face had gone from pale to grey. "This proves nothing, so a human helped you. That doesn't mean—" "The amulet was taken by Frostfang scouts," Draxon interrupted. "They examined it, spoke of claiming territory if I was dead. I heard them myself." He pulled something from his jacket pocket. "And this morning I received this." He held up a small package wrapped in leather. "Their Alpha, Christoph, sent it back with a message. He said, and I quote, 'Whatever disease is rotting Shadowclaw from within, it is not our doing. We may be your rivals, Draxon, but we are not cowards who poison jewelry. Find your traitor and deal with them. We'll kill you face to face when the time comes, as is proper.'" Draxon unwrapped the leather. The obsidian amulet tumbled into his palm, its silver chain now a dull, tarnished grey. "Christoph had his pack's chemist analyze it," Draxon continued. "Silverbane woven into the metal itself at a molecular level, impossible to detect without specialized knowledge. Knowledge that requires understanding of both wolf physiology and human metallurgy." His eyes locked onto Victor. "You studied human chemistry before your first shift, didn't you, Victor? Back when you thought you might be human-born rather than pack-born. You told me yourself it was one of the reasons my father trusted you. You understood both worlds." Victor said nothing, but his silence was damning. "Seize him." Draxon's command was soft, but 6 warriors moved instantly. Victor didn't resist as they grabbed his arms, forcing him to his knees before the altar. "You can't prove I did this," Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "The amulet could have been tampered with by anyone. Frostfang could be lying. You're right, Draxon agreed. I can't prove beyond doubt that you personally applied the Silverbane, but I can prove you knew about it. He walked back to Nisara, taking her bandaged hand gently in his. When I woke up after my collapse, confused and in pain, do you know what my first instinct was? I attacked this girl, accused her of stealing the amulet. I was ready to kill her for saving my life because I'd been taught, by you, Victor, among others, that the Alpha's seal was sacred, untouchable, that removing it without permission was the highest form of disrespect. He turned to face the pack. But here's what's interesting. When I returned to the den 3 days ago, hiding in the shadows to watch, you didn't send anyone to search for the amulet. Not once did you mention its recovery. Not once did you ask where the Alpha's seal might be. Victor's eyes widened slightly. Caught, because you knew it was poison, Draxon continued. You knew that if anyone examined it too closely, they'd discover what you'd done. Better to let it disappear. Better to focus on succession. Better to blame my death on enemy action and move on quickly. He released Nisara's hand and walked back to stand before Victor. You served my father for 15 years. You helped me take the Alpha mantle when he died. I trusted you with my life, Victor. And you repaid that trust with 6 months of slow murder. He was weak, Victor spat suddenly, all pretense dropping. Your father was weak and you're weaker. Shadowclaw needs strength, not sentiment. Not alphas who hesitate to kill, who negotiate with rivals, who show mercy. Enough, Draxon's voice was ice. Pack law is clear. The sentence for attempted alpha murder is death. Do you have anything else to say? Victor lifted his chin, defiant to the end. Only that you'll fail eventually. You're too soft. The pack will. The pack will do what I tell them. Draxon's eyes flashed gold. Because I am alpha and you are nothing. The execution was swift. Draxon's claws extended and Victor's words cut off with a wet gurgle. The body slumped forward. No one spoke. Draxon cleaned his hand on a cloth offered by one of the guards, then turned back to where Nisara stood, looking pale but steady. Come here, he said gently. She hesitated, then walked forward. The pack parted like water, no one daring to touch her, but all of them watching with intense curiosity. She stopped a few feet from the altar, her eyes carefully avoiding Victor's body. Draxon held out his hand. After a moment she took it. This human, he announced to the assembled pack, has done what none of you did. She saw the rot at the heart of Shadowclaw and cut it out. She endured torture to save an alpha who accused her of theft. She asked for nothing in return, not wealth, not protection, not even thanks. He felt Nisara tense beside him, confused about where this was going. Pack law states that those who save an alpha's life earn the pack's eternal debt. Pack law also states that the alpha may grant titles to those who show exceptional courage and loyalty. Understanding began to dawn on faces throughout the hall. Shock, disbelief. No, Helena breathed. My alpha, you can't possibly. I can and I will. Draxon squeezed Nisara's hand gently. Before witnesses, under the light of the full moon's memory, I name this human Nisara as pack kin. First of her kind. She is under Shadowclaw protection. Her enemies are our enemies. Her blood is our blood. Any who harm her answer to me personally. The hall erupted. This is unprecedented. A human cannot be pack kin. The ancestors will. The ancestors, Draxon's voice cut through the chaos like thunder, will understand that honor transcends species. That courage is not measured by strength alone. That this girl, this homeless, powerless, forgotten girl, showed more loyalty in one night than some wolves show in a lifetime. He looked around the hall, meeting every pair of eyes. I am your alpha. My word is law, and my word is this, Nisara of Shadowclaw is pack kin. Anyone who disputes this can challenge me right now. Silence, no one moved. Finally, Marcus stepped forward. The old warrior looked at Nisara for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately bent his knee. Pack kin, he said clearly. One by one, the others followed. Some reluctantly, some with genuine respect, but all of them kneeling. Draxon turned to Nisara. She was staring at the sea of kneeling werewolves with an expression of absolute shock. "What did you do?" She whispered. "I kept my promise," he replied. "You saved my life. I'm ensuring no one ever hurts you again. But I'm just your pack kin now." He smiled, the expression genuine this time. "Welcome to the family. It's complicated, violent, and occasionally tries to murder itself, but it's yours." Nisara looked at her scarred